if you're watching this, you need to know what happens when you ignore the old ways. I'm not telling this story for sympathy or forgiveness. I'm telling it because someone out there needs to hear it before they make the same mistake I did. The reservation is quiet now, but it's not the peaceful kind of quiet. It's the kind that settles in after something terrible has happened, when even the wind seems to hold its breath. The houses stand in uneasy silence, windows shuttered, doors locked tight, as if the people inside are hoping that whatever came through here will pass them by next time. I walk the empty road, boots crunching on gravel, the radio at my hips silent for the first time in days. The air is heavy with the scent of sage and smoke, but underneath it lingers something colder, something that doesn't belong. I can still see the scorch marks on the earth where the fire burned out of control, the twisted remains of what used to be a family's home. I can still hear the cries that echoed through the night, the desperate prayers, the warnings we all shrugged off as superstition. I was raised to believe in evidence, in procedure, in the authority of the badge. But none of that mattered when the old medicine woman came to us, her eyes clouded with age and fear, her voice trembling as she begged us to listen. We didn't. We thought we knew better. Now, as I stand in the aftermath, I realize how wrong we were. The old ways aren't just stories. They're warnings, written in blood and memory, and if you ignore them, you pay the price. This is what happens when you don't listen. Started like any other morning at the station. The coffee was burnt, the paperwork endless, and the radio crackled with the usual chatter about traffic stops and minor disputes. I was halfway through a report when the call came in. Dispatch sounded tense, her voice a little too tight. Unit 3, we've got a report from the Yazzie Ranch. Livestock killed overnight. The owner says it's not a coyote. Says the tracks are strange. I glanced at my partner, who just shrugged. Out here, people saw all kinds of things in the dark. Still, I grabbed my hat and keys, ready to check it out. As I stepped outside, the sun was just beginning to burn off the morning chill. The reservation stretched out in every direction, red earth and sagebrush, distant mesas rising like old bones from the land. I drove out to the ranch, expecting to find a couple of dead sheep and maybe some overactive imaginations. But when I arrived, the scene was different. The animals weren't just killed, they were torn apart, scattered in a way that made no sense. The tracks in the dirt were deep, wide, and nothing like I'd ever seen. Not coyote, not wolf, not anything I could name. The Yazzie family stood together, eyes wide with fear, whispering in Navajo. I tried to reassure them, promising to send the tracks to the state wildlife office. But I could tell they didn't believe me. They kept glancing over my shoulder, as if expecting something to come out of the brush at any moment. Back at the station, I started filling out the report when the door creaked open. The old medicine woman entered, wrapped in a faded shawl, her hair long and silver. She moved slowly, but her eyes were sharp, scanning each of us in turn. "You need to listen," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "This is not an animal. This is something old, something that's been waiting." My partner rolled his eyes, and I felt a flicker of irritation. I respected tradition, but I trusted my training more. I thanked her politely, told her we'd handle it, and went back to my paperwork. I didn't realize then that I just turned away the only person who truly understood what was coming. She stood in the middle of the station, her presence unsettling the usual rhythm of our day. The old medicine woman's voice was steady, but there was a tremor beneath it, a kind of urgency that made even the most hardened officers shift in their seats. "The darkness is coming," she said, her gaze fixed on me. "Only the old ways can stop it. You must gather the people, prepare the songs, the prayers, the protections. If you wait, it will be too late." A few of the younger deputies snickered, exchanging glances as if she were just another eccentric elder with too many stories and not enough sense. My partner leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, a smirk on his face. "We'll call animal control, Grandma," he said, not unkindly, but with the easy dismissal of someone who's never seen anything he couldn't explain. Another officer, older but no less skeptical, tried to smooth things over. "We appreciate your concern, ma'am. We'll keep an eye out." I felt caught between two worlds. My grandmother had told me stories like this, warnings about things that walked after dark, about rules you never broke. But I'd left those stories behind when I put on the badge. I believed in evidence, in backup, in the chain of command. I told myself that was enough. The medicine woman's eyes lingered on me, searching for something. Maybe a memory, maybe a spark of belief. "You think you have time," she said quietly. "You don't. The signs are here. The land is warning you. If you turn away now, you will regret it." She left as quietly as she'd come, her words hanging in the air long after the door closed behind her. The room was silent for a moment, then someone made a joke, and the tension broke. We went back to our routines, pretending nothing had changed. But something had. I could feel it, a chill that settled in my bones, a sense that we just crossed a line we couldn't cross. We thought we had time. We didn't. The next morning, I drove out to the Yazzie Ranch again, this time with a camera and a notepad, determined to document everything by the book. The sun was barely up, casting long shadows across the fields. The air was sharp and cold, and the silence felt heavier than usual. I found the remains of the livestock just where they'd been left. The ground around them churned up with those same strange tracks. I crouched down, snapping photos, measuring the prints, trying to find some logical explanation. But the more I looked, the less sense it made. The wounds on the animals were too clean, too precise, and the way their bodies were arranged felt deliberate, almost ritualistic. As I worked, a few elders from the nearby homes gathered at the edge of the property, watching in silence. Their faces were drawn, eyes wary. I approached them, hoping for some information, but they only shook their heads. One of the women, her hair braided with blue yarn, finally spoke. "This is a sign," she whispered. "The land is angry. Something has been disturbed." Another man, older than the rest, muttered a prayer under his breath, glancing nervously at the sky. I tried to reassure them, telling them we'd get to the bottom of it, but they just looked at me with a kind of pity, as if they already knew I was in over my head. I found more than just tracks that day. Near the fence line, carved into the hard-packed earth, were symbols I didn't recognize, circles, lines, and shapes that seemed to twist and shift if I stared too long. I took pictures, planning to send them to the state crime lab, but deep down I knew they wouldn't find anything. These weren't the marks of any animal or person I'd ever encountered. Back at the station, I filed my report, listing the facts. Livestock killed, unknown tracks, possible vandalism. I attached the photos, logged the evidence, and sent it up the chain. It was all routine, all by the book. But as I typed, the medicine woman's words echoed in my mind. The darkness is coming. Only the old ways can stop it. I shook it off, telling myself I was just tired, that I'd let the fear in the community get to me. That night, as I drove home, I saw lights flickering in the distance, small fires burning in front of a few houses, elders gathered around them, chanting softly. I slowed down, watching as they sprinkled corn pollen on the ground, drawing protective circles in the dust. I wanted to believe it was just tradition, just people doing what they'd always done in times of trouble. But something about the way they moved, the urgency in their voices, made me uneasy. I told myself it was just kids playing pranks, or maybe a pack of coyotes desperate for food. I told myself the symbols were nothing, just random scratches in the dirt. I told myself the medicine woman was wrong, that we'd seen this kind of panic before and it always passed. But deep down, I knew something was different this time. We thought it was just kids or coyotes. We were wrong. The days that followed blurred together in a haze of fear and confusion. Reports started coming in faster than we could handle. First, it was a missing dog, then a missing person, an elderly man who'd gone out to check his traps and never returned. His family found his footprints leading into the arroyo, but they stopped abruptly, as if he'd simply vanished into thin air. We organized a search party, combed the area for hours, but there was nothing. No sign of struggle, no blood, just silence and the uneasy feeling that we were being watched. Then the weather turned. A sudden cold snap swept across the reservation, dropping the temperature 20 degrees overnight. The sky stayed gray and heavy, and the wind howled through the canyons, rattling windows and carrying with it the scent of smoke and something sour. People started complaining about their electronics, phones dying for no reason, radios picking up static and strange voices, lights flickering even when the power was steady. At first, we blamed the weather, the old wiring, the distance from town. But the problems kept spreading, and the explanations felt thinner every day. The community's fear grew with each new incident. Some people demanded that we do more, set up patrols, bring in outside help, find whoever was responsible. Others turned to the old ways, gathering at the medicine woman's house, lighting fires, singing prayers late into the night. The divide between those who trusted the badge and those who trusted tradition grew sharper, and I found myself caught in the middle. Every time I tried to reassure someone, I could see the doubt in their eyes. They wanted answers, but I had none. I started to doubt myself. The evidence didn't add up, and the usual procedures led nowhere. I found myself thinking about the medicine woman's warning more and more, her words echoing in the back of my mind. I remembered the look in her eyes, the certainty in her voice. I wondered if I'd made a mistake by dismissing her so quickly. I wondered if I was in over my head. One night, as I sat in my patrol car, the radio crackled with static. Then a voice I didn't recognize whispered my name. I spun around, heart pounding, but there was no one there. The air inside the car felt colder, heavier, as if something unseen had slipped inside with me. I gripped the steering wheel, trying to steady my nerves, but the feeling didn't go away. By the time we realized what was happening, it was almost too late. The incidents were no longer isolated, no longer easy to explain away. The community was unraveling, fear spreading like wildfire. I could feel the darkness pressing in, and for the first time I wasn't sure if I could hold it back. I waited until after midnight, when the station was quiet and the roads were empty. I drove with my headlights off for the last mile, not wanting anyone to see where I was going. The medicine woman's house sat at the edge of the village, half hidden by juniper and sage, a single light burning in the window. I parked outside and sat for a moment, trying to steady my breathing, feeling the weight of my badge pressing against my chest. I'd spent my whole life believing in order, in logic, in the comfort of rules. But now, with the world unraveling around me, I realized I needed something more. She opened the door before I could knock, as if she'd been expecting me. Her eyes were tired but kind, and she stepped aside to let me in. The air inside was thick with the scent of cedar and sweetgrass, and the walls were lined with old photographs, medicine bundles, and faded drawings. I stood awkwardly, not sure how to begin, but she just nodded and motioned for me to sit. "You've seen enough now," she said quietly. "You know this isn't something you can fight with a gun or a badge." I nodded, unable to meet her gaze. The guilt burned in my chest. "I should have listened," I whispered. "I thought I could handle it. I thought it was just stories." She poured tea into a chipped mug and set it in front of me. "This has happened before," she said. "Every few generations, the darkness comes back. It feeds on fear, on anger, on the cracks in our community. The old ways, songs, prayers, ceremonies are not just superstition. They are protection built over centuries, paid for with sacrifice. When we forget them, when we turn away, the darkness finds a way in." I listened as she told me about the last time, decades ago, when her own mother had led the rituals that saved the village, but at a terrible cost. She spoke of the signs, animals mutilated, people vanishing, storms that came from nowhere. She spoke of the rituals, the gathering of the people, the songs that had to be sung in the right order, the offerings that had to be made. And she spoke of the price. Someone always had to give something up, sometimes even their life. I felt fear, but also a strange sense of hope. For the first time, I understood that the old ways were not just relics of the past, but living, breathing shields against what we were facing. I looked at her, really looked, and saw not just an old woman, but a guardian, a keeper of knowledge I'd been too proud to respect. "Will you help me?" I asked, my voice barely more than a whisper. She nodded, her eyes shining with something like relief. "We will try," she said, "but you must believe. You must be willing to pay the price." The call came just before dawn, slicing through the uneasy quiet that had settled over the reservation. A child was missing. Her name was Lena, only 8 years old, last seen playing near the creek behind her grandmother's house. Her family had searched all night, calling her name until their voices were hoarse. But there was no answer, no sign, not even a footprint in the soft earth by the water. The fear in their eyes was different this time, deeper, sharper, as if they already knew she wasn't just lost. I joined the search party, moving through the brush with a flashlight and a growing sense of dread. The sun was just beginning to rise, painting the sky in bruised purples and reds. We spread out, calling for Lena, but the only response was the wind rattling the dry grass. I found myself drifting away from the others, drawn by something I couldn't explain, a pull in my chest that led me deeper into the trees. That's when I saw it. At first, I thought it was just a trick of the light, a shadow moving against the grain of the dawn. But as I watched, The shape grew clearer, darker, until it stood out against the pale sky. It was tall, impossibly thin, with limbs that bent at wrong angles, and eyes that glowed faintly in the half-light. It moved with a fluid, unnatural grace, gliding over the ground without a sound. For a moment, I was frozen, unable to breathe, unable to look away. Then I saw Lena. She stood a few yards away, her small figure dwarfed by the thing beside her. She didn't move, didn't cry out, just stared straight ahead as if in a trance. The shadow reached for her, its fingers stretching and twisting, and I felt a surge of panic so strong it nearly knocked me to my knees. I shouted her name, my voice cracking, and the thing turned to look at me. Its gaze was cold, ancient, and full of hunger. I ran toward them, heart pounding, but the shadow melted into the trees, taking Lena with it. I crashed through the underbrush, calling her name, but she was gone. The only thing left was a circle of scorched earth. The grass burned away in a perfect ring. We searched for hours, but there was no trace. The other officers tried to comfort the family, but I could see the truth in their faces. They knew, just as I did, that something had taken her, something not of this world. I went straight to the medicine woman, my hands shaking. She listened as I described what I'd seen, her face growing graver with every word. "The window is closing," she said softly. "The darkness is almost through. We can try to bring her back, but it will not be easy. The old ways are our only hope now, but the price will be high." I nodded, feeling the weight of her words settle over me like a shroud. The time for doubt was over. The threat was real, and if we didn't act now, Lena wouldn't be the last to vanish. The medicine woman wasted no time. She sent word through the community, calling everyone to gather at the old ceremonial ground before sunset. The message was clear. Bring your strongest prayers, your oldest songs, and whatever protection you still remembered. By late afternoon, families arrived in battered trucks and on foot, faces drawn and anxious, clutching bundles of sage, corn pollen, and faded medicine pouches. The air was thick with fear, but also with a sense of unity I hadn't seen in years. For the first time, the badge on my chest felt less important than the circle I was about to join. The medicine woman moved among us, her voice low and steady as she gave instructions. "No one leaves the circle once it's begun. Do not break the line no matter what you see. If you hear your name called from the darkness, do not answer. If you see something that looks like a loved one, do not follow." She pressed a pouch of ash and turquoise into my hand. "You must stand at the north. When the time comes, you will know what to do." We formed a wide circle, elders at the 4 cardinal points, children and parents in the center, everyone else filling the gaps. The medicine woman began the ritual, her voice rising in a song older than memory, the words rolling out in a language that seemed to vibrate in my bones. Others joined in, the sound swelling, weaving through the dusk as the sun slipped behind the mesas. As darkness fell, the wind picked up, swirling dust and sparks from the fire at the center of the circle. The temperature dropped sharply, and the shadows outside the ring grew deeper, thicker, as if the night itself was pressing in. I felt the hair on my arms stand up, a cold sweat breaking out along my spine. The medicine woman's song grew louder, more urgent, and the people around me tightened their grip on each other's hands. Then the shadows moved. At first, it was just a flicker at the edge of my vision, but soon shapes began to emerge, tall, thin figures with eyes like burning coals, gliding silently around the circle. They pressed against the invisible barrier, their forms shifting and writhing, sometimes splitting into many, sometimes merging into one. The air was filled with a low, guttural hum, a sound that seemed to vibrate in my teeth and bones. Suddenly, one of the creatures lunged at the circle, its arms stretching impossibly long, clawed fingers reaching for a young boy near the southern point. The barrier held, but only just. The boy screamed, and his mother pulled him close, chanting louder. The medicine woman's voice never wavered, but I could see the strain in her face, the sweat beading on her brow. The attack intensified. The wind howled, carrying voices that sounded like lost relatives, pleading to be let in. The fire at the center of the circle flared, then dimmed, as if struggling to stay alive. I remembered her warning. Do not answer, do not break the line. I closed my eyes, focusing on the pouch in my hand, feeling the roughness of the ash, the coolness of the turquoise. Then I heard my own name, whispered from the darkness, in my mother's voice. For a moment, I almost stepped forward, but the medicine woman's song pulled me back, anchoring me to the earth. I looked at her, and she met my gaze, nodding once. It was time. She stepped into the center of the circle, her voice rising above the chaos. She began a new chant, one I'd never heard before, her arms raised to the sky. The shadows shrieked, recoiling as if burned. The fire blazed up, casting harsh light on her face, making her look both ancient and impossibly strong. With a final, shattering note, she threw a handful of ash into the flames. The fire exploded in a column of light, and the shadows screamed, twisting and writhing as they were pulled back from the circle, dissolving into the night. The wind died instantly, and the silence that followed was absolute. The medicine woman collapsed to her knees, her strength spent. I rushed to her side, but she smiled weakly, pressing the empty pouch into my hand. It is done for now, she whispered, but the darkness is never gone, only sleeping. Remember what you have seen. Remember the price. The people began to weep, some for relief, some for the medicine woman, who had given everything she had to protect them. Lena was found at the edge of the circle, dazed but unharmed, her small hand clutching a piece of turquoise. The threat was contained, but not destroyed. The scars would remain, a reminder of what happens when the old ways are forgotten, and what it costs to bring them back. The days after the ritual passed in a strange, heavy quiet. The wind softened, the air warmed, and the animals returned to grazing as if nothing had happened. Lena's family kept her close, never letting her out of sight, and the other children were forbidden to wander far from home. People moved more slowly, speaking in hushed voices, as if afraid that any sudden noise might wake something still lurking beneath the surface. The medicine woman's house stood empty, her door marked with a line of white ash and a circle of stones. Some said she had gone to rest with her ancestors. Others whispered that she was still watching, her spirit woven into the land she had protected. I walked the reservation with a new kind of awareness, seeing the world through eyes that could no longer pretend not to believe. The badge on my chest felt heavier, not because of the authority it gave me, but because of the responsibility it now carried. I saw the scars left behind, The burned patches of earth where the shadows had pressed hardest, the children who woke screaming from nightmares, the elders who sat by their fires long into the night, singing the old songs with trembling voices. The community was safe for now, but the cost was written in every haunted glance, every empty chair at the medicine woman's table. I spent hours at her house, sitting on the worn steps, trying to make sense of everything I'd seen. That I remembered the first time she came to the station, her warning dismissed, her wisdom ignored. That I remembered the way she looked at me, searching for belief, for humility, for the willingness to listen. That I thought about all the times I'd chosen procedure over tradition, evidence over intuition, and I felt a deep, aching regret. If we had listened sooner, if we had honored her knowledge instead of brushing it aside, maybe the darkness would never have gotten so close. Maybe Lena would never have been taken. Maybe the medicine woman would still be here, her laughter echoing through the village. But regret is a poor teacher, and the past cannot be changed. All I could do was carry her lessons forward, weaving them into the fabric of my work, my life, my community. I started learning the old songs, sitting with the elders, asking questions I'd once thought foolish. I kept the pouch of ash and turquoise in my pocket, a reminder of the night we stood together against the darkness, a promise that I would never again turn away from the old ways. The scars will fade, but the memory will remain. The medicine woman is gone, but her wisdom endures, in the prayers whispered at dawn, in the circles drawn in the dust, in the stories told around the fire. I wish we'd listened sooner. I wish we'd understood that tradition is not weakness, but strength. That the old ways are not just relics, but shields, and that sometimes the only way to move forward is to look back and remember who we are. In the months that followed, I found myself in a role I never expected. People came to me not just for police reports or help with disputes, but for advice on protection, for guidance on which songs to sing, which prayers to say when the wind changed or the dogs barked at nothing. I became a bridge between two worlds, one foot in the realm of law and order, the other in the deep, winding paths of tradition. It wasn't always easy. There were still skeptics, still those who rolled their eyes when I sprinkled corn pollen at a crime scene or paused to listen to an elder's warning before making an arrest. But slowly, trust grew. The community saw that I was willing to learn, to admit what I didn't know, to honor the wisdom that had kept us safe long before radios and patrol cars. We wrote new protocols, blending the old ways with the new. For every standard procedure, there was now a space for tradition. A moment of silence before entering a home where something felt wrong. A call to the medicine people when the signs pointed to more than just human trouble. A reminder to every officer that sometimes the best evidence is a story passed down through generations. The badge and the medicine pouch sat side by side on my desk, equal in weight and meaning. Children grew up hearing not just about laws and rules, but about the reasons behind them, the stories of what happens when you ignore a warning, the power of a song sung at the right moment, the strength found in community. Elders who had once been pushed aside were now invited to meetings, their voices respected, their memories valued. The scars from that terrible night began to heal, replaced by a sense of unity and purpose I'd never seen before. I still walk the reservation at dusk, watching the shadows lengthen, listening for the sounds that don't belong. I know now that the darkness is never truly gone, only waiting for us to forget. The old ways are there for a reason. They are the threads that tie us to the land, to each other, to the ancestors who faced these same fears and found a way through. If you're listening to this, don't make the mistake I did. Don't ignore the old ways. Don't turn away from the wisdom that has survived for centuries. Could be the difference between safety and sorrow, between light and darkness. And now I want to hear from you. Have you ever ignored a warning you wish you'd heeded? Did you ever brush off a story, a superstition, a gut feeling, only to realize too late that it was trying to protect you? Share your story below. Let's keep these lessons alive, for ourselves and for those who come after us. Because sometimes, the only thing standing between us and the darkness is the courage to listen.